Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? Ever had this happen to you? Somebody says something. Maybe it's in the real world conversation. Maybe it's in gaming, and you just look at them and you're like, "What the hell does that even mean? What? What'd you say?" This video's not about that mostly. So what is it going to be about? Lee, your humble game master, Lee Rimmer, posted something on Facebook yesterday. Really great. This video is not going to be a response to that either. It's really not going to be about that, but he got me thinking. I'd like to do a response to his little subject here. And he talked about gritty fantasy stories, like things that are like bleak versus like stories that are like fun escapism, and the different type of character ideas those promote, different type of character motivations. But it got me thinking about the type of characters I like to play, because there's various, ideas or concepts that I like to play. And I'm not talking about classes, and not really about archetypes, but probably more like maybe broad archetypes or concepts. And one of these is a supporting character. And it's funny. DeVay Breon Jackson made a video. DBJ made one, and it was called something like the top 6 RPG ideas that never work. And one of them was called Hero and Company. That's a real classic literary theme when it comes right down to it. The idea there's one or two protagonists, and everybody else that's involved in the story, they're kind of like their supporting cast, their entourage, the rest of the gang. And to me, I've played in situations like that, and it can be a lot of fun. Now these main characters are like the protagonists, but and everybody else isn't necessarily a protagonist. But I'll tell you what. In many cases, like, at least in the games I like to play, I don't necessarily think that the player characters have to be the protagonists in the first place. A lot of times they are kind of like on the fringe. And, and I'm not necessarily talking about just maybe not being good, although that's certainly an option. And I've talked about playing scoundrels before, and I'll probably talk about it again. But I'm talking more about the idea that the whole game world doesn't have to revolve around them. Sure, the story is about what the players' characters did, how they interacted with the world. But, you kind of earn the right to be protagonist. Maybe you don't want to be protagonist. Maybe you want to stay on the fringe the entire time. So that can be really interesting. That being said, you may have some main characters, main mover and shakers in there, and then other people are kind of supporting them. What I don't mean by that, though, is, I was playing a game, and I had a friend that was more of like, he was younger. And nowadays, this is way before I knew about things about like simulationism and gamism and narrativism and all this kind of stuff. I knew about the edition wars. So we're looking about maybe like 2010. And, Aaron's going to play in my game. I play a couple of one-shots with him. And great game master. Like, just had this talent for bringing NPCs alive and thinking on his feet and being ultra creative. And I really envy his skill. Like, something I kind of aspire to have a skill in that particular area. So we played in that game, but I'm like running more of like an OSR, old school kind of D&D sort of game. So we're getting together and talking about what kind of characters everybody wants to play. And he says, yeah, I really like to play a bard or some other like supporting character that can really buff the other characters. And I'm like, what the hell did you just say? It's just not a mindset I'd ever run into or ever, encounter back in my OSR days. And this is not what this is talking about. I'm not talking about mechanically supporting other characters. So the idea, okay, maybe your character simply just isn't as powerful as some of the other characters in the group. And I've played this a bunch of times. I mean, heck, I think everybody's had a character that died, and maybe you started out something that wasn't quite as badass as everybody else in the group at that point. But or just join the game late. But I don't care. I've played second fiddle to a lot of people mechanically in one way, shape or another. Doesn't have to be a huge deal just because Durgan the Mighty killed 10 trolls in this battle and I killed 1 or 2. Well, okay, it made sense from a literary standpoint and maybe a simulationist standpoint, because it's kind of like Hercules and that other guy he traveled with that helped him kill the Hydra and all that stuff. I forget that guy's name all the time. Anyhow, somebody will remind me. Whatever, it doesn't really matter. The other guy, he's not Hercules. But, he was his pal. He hung out with him. And a bunch of the other Argonauts, and, with Jason, they're not quite as important, but they're important anyway, Maybe you play a character that's simply not as skilled in some area as another character. So in some situations, you play kind of like second fiddle, or you're supporting. One of the things I love about playing in this all-for-one Regime Diabolique game is we've got this one character who's just really socially skilled. He can con anybody. So Briscoe, played by JDRD30, we're in the scenes and Francois is narrating what he does, and it's just, my character's completely useless in these situations because Philippe is a bumbling idiot when it comes to social situations. In fact, sometimes he said some things which made them worse. But it's a lot of fun to play the supporting character or maybe detracting character in situations like that, because you're going to have. I talked about before in like the heister caper video I made a long time ago. There's times that somebody is really really good at something, everybody else can be kind of supporting at that moment. Maybe I'm playing in a game where my character simply isn't as important socially as somebody else. Maybe somebody's a baron or a lord or a knight or the heir of something, and we're just not as important. It's still fun. I don't have to be the most important person in the room, the most important person in the party. For me, it simply makes sense from a story sense, and even like a simulationist manner. Like I'm playing my guy, what he would be like in that world. He's the protagonist in his own little world, in his own mind, the legend in his own mind. It doesn't matter that he's traveling with the heir to the kingdom, and my guy is whatever, the guy that shoes his horses and maybe can sneak around, whatever my guy does. Another thing I really like to do, and this is kind of off on a tangent, is I like it when I'm not as good as another player in some area, and I get to watch them and kind of learn from them. So this really isn't quite like playing that type of character necessarily, not like from a character concept standpoint, although sometimes you can kind of do that and just kind of watch somebody else kind of stretch out, and then it's like, I've enjoyed that. Sometimes I can be a little jealous, but I learn from that, and I think that's always a good thing. I always had this mindset for a long time, playing music, that I want to be the worst guy in the band, because that way I kind of like force myself to play catch up, and not just kind of like lay back. And I played in other bands where I lay back, and it's fine. I don't have to like really push myself so hard, but I don't really grow either. So it's always a good thing to play with some people that are better at you in some area, whether it's improv or narration, or with the rules, or with whatever, or figuring out puzzles, or just coming up with stuff on the fly, like in terms of dialogue and conversation, whatever it happens to be. I think that helps. So sometimes it's not necessarily my character is a supporting character. It's like I'm a supporting character because I'm not as good at the game or good at that part of the game as the other player. So I sit there and learn, and I don't mind kind of like sitting back and watching the fun and interjecting little bits here and there. I can have a blast doing that as well, because sometimes it's just kind of fun to watch somebody else perform, and you do your own little thing here and there. But there's people I just like to play with because they're that entertaining. So a bit rambly, but I like playing a supporting character. Not the only thing I like to play, but if you haven't done it, it can be a real hoot. It doesn't always have to be all about you. What do you think?